Have you ever wondered what it means to be inclusive? In short, inclusive leadership encourages diversity and it's proven to make companies more successful. This is because these leaders reach and respond to a larger team, and they also ensure that the teams are heard, respected, valued, and retained. These factors make inclusive leadership such a valuable asset to an organization. You might also be wondering what this has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That illustrates the many facets that fall under the umbrella of DEI. We are so excited to have you here with us today. This conversation is going to be on fire. I am looking forward to you meeting all of my guests today. We value your feedback and opinions. Please drop them in the chat. We intend to respond to as many comments and questions from our audience. This takes a great deal of effort to pull off, and I'm eternally grateful to all of my loyal guests. Every week, we create new content and look forward to you subscribing to our YouTube channel to keep up with us. My name is Rochelle Carrier, and I'm a DEI consultant and authoress of Emotional Intelligence, a toolkit for managing diversity, equity, and inclusion. The link to purchase the book will be in the comments. And for a living, I help organizations implement DEI plans and reframe their cultural mindsets through thought-provoking workshops and webinars. Join us as we always continue to share the different voices in the DEI space. Here with us today are Black leaders joining us in our Black Male Excellence series that are moving and shaking in their industry. Gentlemen will all come to the stream, and I will give you all 30 seconds to introduce yourself. I want to say thank you again for everybody joining in. So, gentlemen, what is it, about inclusive leadership? I'm going to start with Jason. If you can, first of all, give us, a 30-second bio of, what you've done in the past and what inclusive leadership really means.
Yeah, absolutely. Rochelle, thank you so much for the intro. So my name is Jason Lewis. About 20 years in the corporate space, worked for the Boeing company, and I retired from Boeing last year and became an entrepreneur. I run 3 businesses today, and it's probably the most exciting time in my life. 2 boys, they're grown, and I'm just having a lot of fun right now. So again, Rochelle, thank you so much, and I look very much forward to this discussion.
Oh, thank you. And Carl, can you give us a 30-second, introduction and let us know a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Carl Sean Watkins. I'm the CEO and founder of Carl Sean Watkins Consultant, and we are a coaching and consulting firm. And our expertise is in the DEI, and I just empower leaders in the DEI space to overcome their fear of vulnerability, their self-limiting beliefs, and to strengthen their ability to influence, collaborate, motivate, and lead. And I do that using vulnerability and leadership package that I created called Diversity Plus Vulnerability Equals Inclusion. And in that's how I teach, train, coach, and consult. I'm also a law student studying civil rights, just finished up 2L. So I'm happy about that. No homework for at least a while. And I also am an elder in my church organization as well. So I appreciate the Pastor Davis.
We'll move on to you, Pastor Davis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Philip Davis. I serve as a senior pastor of Greater Shiloh Church in Easton, Pennsylvania, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and campus in Haiti. I also serve as the host of the show Courageous Conversations on PBS. I've been serving there for 3 years, doing work in the community, bringing light to issues of equity and diversity. Also a doctoral student in my dissertation writing process. So I might look a little scruffy because I've had my face in the book in the books for quite a while, but it's an honor to be here, Rachel. Thank you so much for opening this opportunity and this dialogue.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for always saying yes. There's some guests who've been here already before, and it fills my heart. Carlo White, if you can give us a 30-second bio of what you do to
Oh
introduce
yeah,
yourself
so
to the audience.
I'm Carlo White. I'm the leader of White Holdings, where we have several business units: White Holdings Trucking, White Holdings Development, and we're just a business management firm. I'm a prior Air Force officer, married to Nika White. Some people know who she is, and we've been married 25 years. And actually, daughter just graduated from the University of South Carolina. Son attends the University of South Carolina, and I'm a Clemson alum, so figure that dynamic out. And you asked a question about what does inclusive leadership means to each of us. For me, leadership is the art of influencing people, and the way you influence people or you gain influence is to add value. And so, inclusive leadership to me is being a leader who search to add value to their people, and then bring people along with equipping and empowering them to add value to the organization and to other people around them, no matter where they are, from sweeping the floors to actually being the CEO. A leader brings everybody, equips and empower them to add value wherever they are for the betterment of the organization, is what I look at as inclusive leadership.
Right. I'm so happy you jumped in. I'm going to thread from that, but before we do, let's introduce Parik. Parik, if you can, give us a 30-second bio and
Sure.
introduce yourself to the
Yeah,
audience.
thank you. It's so great to be here once again, to be on one of your shows. So absolutely excited about this opportunity. I'm Parik mcfree. I'm CEO of LinkedIn Inclusion Corporation. We're based here in San Francisco. LinkedIn Inclusion is, well, first of all, join LinkedIn Inclusion, linkedininclusion.us, right? So we have two streams that we really work on, we're really interested in, and that is all of us from an inclusive perspective. It's a table where everyone has a seat. Join this community. The second piece of that business, or our focus, is on artificial intelligence, maximizing the potential of machine learning and artificial intelligence to train organizations, corporate Fortune 500s, all the way down to SMBs or just startups, on how to, in essence, advance diversity, equity, inclusion in their organizations. And so we're really excited about the traction that we've been able to experience. And then for the last note that I'm supposed to say is that we recently won 3 Anthem Awards. And we're very excited about that because of the work that we're doing in diversity, equity, inclusion, the work we're doing in just advancing technology in this space and really just setting the stage for what's next. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And Justin Key, how about yourself? 30 seconds.
Yes. Hello, everyone. 30 seconds. My name is Justin Key. I am super excited to be here with you all today. I work in diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting. I also primarily work in entertainment as well, based in Los Angeles, California. And I'm just excited to be here. I'm a country farm boy from Tennessee. I'm saying that because I surprised my mama and went home for Mother's Day. And I'm full of Southern food as my mom is a retired chef. So super excited to be here with you all today and to continue this conversation.
Oh, wonderful. And Vincent.
Yes, thank you for having me today. Excited to be part of this conversation. Thanks for reaching out. Look forward to speaking with all of these gentlemen. But named Vince Wilson. I serve as the Deputy Director for the Obama Foundation in Northern California. Prior to this, worked at Dartmouth College in fundraising. So that's what my career path has been. Just working in fundraising first for the annual fund for financial aid. Now I help raise funds that will support the different initiatives of the Obama Foundation, as well as the presidential center that's being built in Chicago.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Jason, we had the opportunity to meet actually on Dr. Nika White's podcast. Do you remember that? Yes.
Definitely.
And my heart was full after I left that show. My heart is always full after I've been attended Dr. Nika White's podcast. And this, we all know what goes, behind the scenes when you're doing a podcast. It's research, it's alignment, it's mission driven. And this is why we're here today. So I want to give you, the opportunity to introduce yourself, to be able to tell the audience what it is that you do, and then we can start right off and thread from, Carlo White, what he was talking about inclusive leadership.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you so much for having me. And gentlemen, good to see you all. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. My name is Jason Gant, and I'm joining you from San Francisco. I'm in the Bay Area. And I'm actually a emotional intelligence coach and consultant. So I work with organizations like Fidelity, Sephora, AWS, B of A, to help them reduce burnout, stress, and languishing. I truly believe that we all have an opportunity to learn skills that help us put our best foot forward. We're all a part of this pandemic. We've all been stressed out, pulled in different directions, but there are actual tools that we can learn and practice in that can help us be our best selves. And so that's what emotional intelligence is, and mindfulness, and really working with leaders to understand how they feel. And once they understand how they feel, then they can better communicate what they need. So this is both in personal life and in professional. So I'm really excited to be in this conversation. And just to bounce off of what Carlo White was sharing, the word psychological safety comes to mind. And a leader that creates an environment and a setting where it's psychologically safe, meaning that folks can be themselves. They can share their ideas without feeling bad. And so creating a space where we have employees with psychological safety and having that come from the top down is a way to inspire and motivate inclusive leadership. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Pastor Davis, I see you shaking your head. And what are you thinking?
I'm first off, I'm grateful again to be on the show with you. But thinking about kind of self-awareness, and when you think about inclusive, being intentional about this type of leadership, there has to be a self-awareness and a self-honesty that allows us to explore our own biases, right? And our own historical, maybe even trauma or instruction that we've received over time. And I think it's so critically important when we're thinking about this type of leadership that we begin with self, right? And we really begin to examine our own filters and how we view humanity. And I think it's important to really remember, right, that we are all created for those that believe and have that theology that we're all created by God. We're created beings, but we're all in the human family. And then extending that love and that compassion to one another, I think is foundational when you're talking about leadership and leading people.
Right. It's interesting. It all goes back to the self. And when I think of the self, I think of emotional intelligence. And I honestly believe that emotional intelligence, once you are aware of the emotion that you're currently feeling, then you can, again, this is from the perspective of a leader, then you can address, what employees or team members are feeling in a way that's empathetic and to make them feel included and heard. Right? Wouldn't you agree, Jason?
Yes.
I think it's.
I absolutely do, and I think Carlo, Pastor Davis, and Jason touched on this. But one of the things that I found to be quite effective is vulnerability. Being vulnerable as a leader, and demonstrating that you've got your own flaws to your employees, and being open to that. I found it to be quite powerful. Seeking feedback, both appreciative feedback and constructive feedback from your employees, and being vulnerable on the things that you're not really good at, and speaking up about that, I've found to be quite effective. And it creates an environment, when we talk about inclusiveness, for me, it's really about the diversity of thought, creating a space to Pastor Davis's point, where people speak up, people are not afraid to say what's on their minds, and it's a safe space. And so I've always found that when I have a team that's quite diverse, whether it's culturally, and I think as part of a leader, understand different cultures, because we're all made up of different backgrounds, and our experiences in life shapes our beliefs. And so my beliefs may be different from my employees, and taking the time to understand their backgrounds, I've found to be quite helpful for me as a leader, to be able to allow people to step into their own self and bring their whole selves to work every day. So, many of you today, I mean, it just resonates with me, what you're saying, because I touch on this every day.
Hmm. Parek, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah.
No, someone, go ahead. Go ahead. Who was speaking? Go ahead.
No, I was I was gonna say, oh man, somebody hit my favorite word. If you go check out my bio, my service mark is Mr. Vulnerability. I think it is the key. It's essential. It's something that us as African American men have been taught, and I do mean that in the essence of capital T, taught to refrain from showing, engaging in, and also giving us the wrong definition of what it truly means as far as exposure to harm and danger. I have been on a campaign for 30 plus years now throughout corporate and regular life, to show that the vulnerability, all of us have it, but my vulnerability is not yours. So to encompass my understanding that it's a exposure of harm or danger to me may not be that to you. And I think when we look at words in terms and not categorize them as what Merriam-Webster has designed them to mean for us, but I've come into a place of the application of what does vulnerability mean to me? How is it acceptable to me? How can I deal with that? And when you talk about the emotional intelligence piece, the key part about that is the intelligence. A lot of time the emotion is what rules that out. And when you think about the vulnerability in leadership, and we're talking about this leadership piece, I teach and train on that very aspect, Jason, where you have the leaders have to understand that they come from a place. Everyone knows that you don't have all the answers. So why do we continue to keep this facade as if we do? Yes, there are circumstances and there are relationships to where we must be in charge and in control, but it's the cat is out the bag that you don't know all the answers. That's why you have people working for you. There come places and points of time where you have to show that you don't have that, and that trust is built based upon that vulnerability. If you're able to show me something vulnerable in reference to you, I'm automatically at a deeper connection level than anyone else that I've been involved with, because you've shown me a capacity to show me a flaw, and you're embracing that flaw, and that flaw is not overtaking you as far as what you are able to accomplish, but what it is showing you that you may need help in an area to accomplish. And I think this is where we get off to the wrong foot of saying that being vulnerable is the weakness part of that. Vulnerable is not putting yourself out there to be out there, but it's definitely putting yourself out there without the expectation of reciprocity. I'm not being vulnerable, wanting anything. I'm being vulnerable to let you know that there's a place in me that I'm trusting for you. So yeah, you guys have opened up my floodgates with that one.
Yeah, I wanted to I thank you for that, Carl. One of the things that I do, from this question of inclusive leadership is, one, I recognize in starting linked inclusion, it's super complex, right? So when we're inclusive, those of us who are, and we're working at it daily, I see it as our superpower, right? So as I look at this complex question, I tried to make it digestible for myself. So I created an acronym, PAR, right? So when I'm in a situation, which as leaders, we're always in a situation for, being an example, showing others the way, whether they are superiors or subordinates, team members, or whomever. Pause. So the P stands for pause. Now, I can easily solve for something. I can easily solve for a challenge. Matter of fact, we're human as humans. We tend to kind of gravitate to, that path of least resistance, that which we've done in the past, right? Or we go to those that we know the best, our friends, right? Those are associates that think like us, sometimes look like us, walk like us, talk like us, right? So stop that. pause, right? And so the next thing that I ask myself to do and challenge myself is to admit. So when we think about this vulnerability question, one, I admit that I don't have all the answers. But at the same time, the other use of the term admit is to admit others to the table, admit others to the conversation, admit others, to solve, to give them an opportunity to solve the issue. And then the R stands for resume. So I paused and I've taken a look at myself and I admit that I don't have all the answers, but I'm also admitting diverse, ideas, persons, experience, backgrounds, and the like around the table. Then I resume the process. I get back to the order of business. And I get back to the order of business with a new group of individuals, myself, those that look like me, talk like me, speak like me, think like me, but then also a number of new, diverse, unique, and interesting talent and experts around the table, right? That allows us now to achieve something that's completely different than what we would have achieved had I not actually taken this opportunity to pause, admit, and then resume. And so I've applied this acronym over the last, say, 12 months or so. And I've been really fortunate enough to have a number of leaders, both within the organization and outside the organization. Even Rochelle, for example, has given me all types of leadership jewels and pearls, if you will. And so I've been extremely fortunate with the idea of accepting the fact that I am absolutely not an expert at everything. And that absolutely feels good every morning. I mean, imagine the weight that is is taken off your shoulders every morning, right? When you can admit the fact that, I don't know everything, but today I'm going to learn something new because I have new people around the table. I've got diverse backgrounds around the table. We're going to achieve something greater, bigger, smarter, faster, just because we're all involved. So thanks so much for this opportunity to just, opine a little bit and then advance that acronym that I use. Thanks.
No, I want to welcome to the stage Martin Pratt. Thank you so much for joining in. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can. How are you today? Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me. Whenever someone asks, how are you since the pandemic, I always try to give an honest, transparent answer. And we're in a transition as a family, moving from Philadelphia to Louisiana for the summer so that our daughter can see her grandparents and her other cousins and stuff. So I was trying to do it outside where it's nice and quiet, everything. But I'm inside with the 7-month-old. So y'all hear in the background as well. Other than that, I'm doing good. She's got her first 2 teeth and building out a business while being a dad, while being a husband, while being a community leader for particularly Black people, but it's difficult. It's a challenge every day.
Right. And what's your, briefly introduce us, 30 seconds, tell us, what is
Sure.
exactly that you do?
I've been in social media and around building digital communities since the 90s, back in Black Planet days, and then was blessed to be a really petty person on Twitter and created the hashtag along with 3 other people, Black Twitter. And then recently, in the last 2 years, working with 4 other founders, creating something called Black LinkedIn is thriving and building out that community on LinkedIn. And my side, quote unquote, business is helping media companies understand how to reach the Black market demographic and sell the market to us.
That's so interesting. It's amazing. You said Black LinkedIn. Can you go into detail a little bit?
Sure.
Just to give us
there was an article. Yeah, there was an article written by Shanti Martin in New York Times called "Black LinkedIn is Thriving," and that was identifying several outspoken leaders on LinkedIn who are Black, like Elizabeth Leiba, John Graham, Aisha, and Future Kane. And because of that article, my co-founders were inspired to create a Clubhouse room. And then that was in November of 2020. And then when Clubhouse said you can create a club, we created a club called Black LinkedIn is Thriving. And we've met so far almost 2 years straight, not missed a Sunday at 9 a.m. One of our co-founders is on the West Coast. And we have quite a few members on the West Coast. So some people tune in at 6 a.m. every Sunday. And we kind of hold church for the Black person who is a entrepreneur, who's a professional artist. We have several imams and just anybody, first ladies. We have 2 first ladies that come in. Just really anybody Black that feels that, being, I guess, having a standard of excellence. And I call it intentional intelligence. You have an intention, using it the most intelligent way you can. We hold space for that, and we give grace. And it's just been a great, an exciting time to be alive. And unfortunately, also a necessary thing to build community while we have lost so many people. I've lost 6 people. One of my co-founders almost died. My daughter was born not breathing for 14 minutes. So through this 2-year period, I think that Black people, we really need each other. And we really, I think we try to really create community wherever we are. And so I just look at Black LinkedIn as a outreach of the fact that dealing with the aftermath of George Floyd's murder and these so-called pledges to help us, and all the other things that are happening, and just this environment of, I don't like to call it wokeness, but I call it being awake and reset. I don't like the term resignation. I don't think anybody resigned. I think people said, F this, I'm resetting my life. And so in that space, being able to create a little section of the world where like 5,000 people are in our club and about 1,600 are in our private group on LinkedIn. And just a space for those folks to talk, to support each other, to cry, to laugh, just whatever.
Right. And, to tie all this together, and anybody can chime in. Why do you think the inclusive leadership is actually important? What's the importance of it in your opinion?
So I'll chime in. I believe inclusive leadership is important because it allows you to learn and listen from different perspectives, where it will bring to your attention the different blind spots that you may have had. It allows you to make your community, your group, to feel heard, as it was mentioned before, as well as that vulnerability piece and the empathy piece is really, really key. Because if you're able to be vulnerable and show that you too do have flaws, as well as the empathy part, even though all of us have different experiences and backgrounds, all of us feel the same emotions. I may not have had the same experience with you, but I know how anger feels, I know how sadness feels, and I can be empathetic towards that part. And it allows us to come together and really move forward without as many obstacles or back and forth to reach a common goal. It allows us to achieve that in the most productive way that will be able to affect the larger group of individuals. Because if I'm looking at it from my point of view, that's only my perspective, without taking in your point of view, where, as I mentioned earlier, a blind spot, now that I have your perspective and being more inclusive, I'm doubling my impact. And I think that's the importance of inclusive leadership, is being able to have the largest impact that you possibly can with an aligned goal that everybody is working towards.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Vincent. There are a lot of groups in the workspace that are marginalized historically. And, a lot of these big companies, we see progress. I worked for Boeing for 20 years, and, quite frankly, it's night and day, even 5 years ago, where they are today. But groups are still marginalized. And so as leaders, it's so important, to make people feel like, they can come to work every day and just be themselves and not worry about, being judged, not worry about, if they said something, they're going to be offensive. and create an environment where we all work well together. Quite frankly, I've been an executive for many years, and the environment I create, I'm one of the team members. I don't go in feeling like this hierarchy. People know I'm the boss, but you don't have to pretend. So to me, when I create that space, I felt that we get the best of people. We built complex, engineering. We build airplanes. So whether it's commercial aircraft, bombs, military fighters, and we get people from all walks of life, to support these initiatives. And people, quite frankly, folks that are on my team and within the organization, because I've seen great leaders throughout the Boeing company. I've got to tell you that the initiatives that are being taken now, it's commendable, but I want to see more of it. I want to see more leaders stepping up, not only Black leaders, but leaders in general, stepping up to make people their best selves, and really, whether it's in the workspace or in even the personal space, to make sure that they're delivering their best selves each and every day, and they feel comfortable doing it.
I agree, Jason. So inclusive leadership is interesting because I don't know. It's almost like good leadership. Without being inclusive, how are you even a good leader? Because if leadership is the art of that, influencing people, and if you gain influence by adding value, you add value by being curious of other people's perspective. If I put you in a room with me and I only just talk to you, but I'm never curious to hear from you, how did I add any value to you? But I have to empower you to add value to me, because you're most valuable when you're adding value, and I'm most valuable when I'm adding value. So just this inclusive leadership, I don't know how you separate the two. I don't. So at some point, I guess we had to add what a good leader looks like. Inclusive makes you a good leader. So inclusive leadership, but they're inseparable for me, because the whole goal is to add value to people, and you add value by being curious about what they can add value to the whole group, and that's how we actually empower one another.
And I see that as the true perspective of it all. And you make a great point with that, Carlo. I don't know when it came a point of where we had to have a separation of that to understand what leadership was, and looking at us, and I'm sure that we all have at some point in time had that leadership that was not to that standard. And a lot of people see that, work with that, put up with that, tolerate that, and all of the above. But I think when we're talking about inclusive leadership, I take it from a place of encouraging diversity. And when I say diversity to me is value. Diversity is currency to me. That's what I consider diversity. If you're bringing to the table something that I do not have at my table, you have brought value to my table. Regardless of where you look or regardless of where you come from, you bought something that I did not have. And in the essence of me as growing up, even from a little one, if someone bought something to our home as a dish in the African American community, they brought some value to the house. So when we get this and we have that, it's just proven that when we're in that and we're encouraging that diversity, which is in turn that value to me, the reach and the respond is greater. We can influence more. We can have those motivated to work for us more. And I like that, Jason, when you're saying about you as being in the echelon of those that you work with. The hierarchy mentality is really where we are now, to where people have said, as Martin eloquently put it, F that, right? We've got to that point in place because we've gotten tired of how that has came about at us. But it also ensures that being that inclusive leader, that your teams are heard from, they're respected, they're valued, and they're also looking at it as a point of saying, I'm in this for something more than a paycheck. This is, you've included me into this. The foundations of, I have a friend that worked at Boeing as well, Jason, and he's on 30 something years now, and he's over in Delaware, and he tells me from time to time he's never seen it to the capacity of where it is now. Where when he started, he didn't even have a high school education, but he worked machining and worked his way up. Now he's one of the VPs over there. the time has come now on that leadership cap to be inclusive because of where it came from. And I think we missed the mark of that in leadership. We get to a place where our name is on the marquee, our name is on the door. And in essence, we forget about the grind, we forget about the journey, and we forget about the ones that we left back in Egypt.
Yeah, I would agree that one of the challenges for inclusive leadership is cultural intelligence, right? So, I'm in the community of therapists, and it's very important that we understand culturally that many people are just at a deficit when it comes to the minority community, right? Historically, systemic racism has, stopped a proper educational movement to help really educate. So when we started our show on PBS, it was to educate, inform, and inspire. And my community that I speak to is mostly the white community because they don't know who we are as African Americans, Latinx individuals. And so it's important to make sure that there's cultural intelligence, because when there's a dirge of that intelligence, essentially there are assumptions that are made about our community that then only continue to cause racism and division to be within our community. So I think cultural intelligence is critically important, specifically as it relates to the type of leadership, inclusive leadership that we're talking about, because if we don't know the people that we labor amongst, a little scriptural reference, right, then how can we give them the equity that is necessary, the inclusion that is necessary? And what I found through the emails that I receive and the communications that I have is honestly, white folks don't know anything about us. We've spent our whole educational time learning about the white community, but it is not reciprocated. And if it is, it's a whitewashed version. So if you're going to have inclusive leadership, there has to be equity and learning about the sojourn, if you will, of the Black community, the Latinx community, so that you can understand and see us through a lens that is not fogged with white supremacy. And so often in organizations, when you begin to address that, it becomes divisive, right? People get that pushback because now you're calling
defensive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not what we're doing. What we're saying is that you don't know us as a people, and therefore it is impossible for you to understand our sojourn and allow equity within a workspace.
I have something to say. Do you think also that, given the racial social construct that we live in, that it's imperative for us to educate? Or, let's talk about the oppressor, let's say. So the oppressor is doing the oppressing, and they're perpetuating the narrative. And should it be up to, them to be able to say, we're going to call this out. This is an uncomfortable conversation that we are going to have. Or is it important for us to have that conversation with them?
Yeah, I think, sorry, let me just jump in because I've been waiting to make a two or 3 points here. So, I think, and I'll just jump on Rochelle's point because I think that's a very, very good question. So I think it's on both sides. I think the onus is on us, right? So I purposefully placed our company startup right on the edge of the financial district here in San Francisco. So when I walk out of the building at lunchtime, I have to walk into the financial district to go to the store, buy whatever for lunch. And when I'm on this little journey on a daily basis, I oftentimes walk behind groups of white men, maybe 4, maybe 6. They all look alike. They're all the same height. They're all dressed alike. They're all speaking the same language. They're all in their little zone. It's almost, if you watch Tour de France, it's like a peloton, going down the sidewalk, right? And I'm like, this is a great opportunity for me. So I intentionally placed us here for this exact moment, for this exact experience. It is now up to me to have a conversation with these individuals, to introduce, not necessarily our challenge per se, what the experience is, but meet them where they are and have them meet me where I am. It is important to take into consideration the equity, the experience, the challenges, the trauma that we've all experienced. And this is something that we deal with and try to solve for within inclusion on a daily basis. But I'm of the mind that those stories and journeys are important, and we must tell them, and we must share them, and we must experience them. We must share that experience. But right this moment, as we are in this, on this walk, as I'm on this walk to the store with these gentlemen, behind these gentlemen, here's a rich opportunity for me to introduce myself and say, the narrative that you think you know about me is not me. This is me, right? I'm going to the same stores that you are. I'm walking the same sidewalks that you're walking. I have the same challenges that you have. We have the same similar experiences. Let's look for an opportunity to be stronger together, right? From here, let's acknowledge the past, of course, let's deal with it, but let's look for opportunities to be stronger together from here and move forward from here. I think that what I witnessed, and I've made a number, as a startup in the DEI plus wellness space, weekly I'm meeting with investors, and there's not a lot of us on the other side of the cam or, that I'm pitching to or answering questions for, and a lot of times I am met with, well, wait a minute, I'm not a racist. I'm inclusive. I'm on board with everything that you're doing. Okay, thank you. So what are you doing exactly? Well, we have some ideas what we'd like to do, but we're not doing it just yet, right? And so it's a challenge for me to advance this conversation. But to make my point, I guess, even more clear here is that as I'm having these conversations on a daily, day in and day out basis with investors that don't look like me, I share with them an idea. And an idea is that I'm not asking you to do anything different than what you're doing already from a business perspective. What I'm asking you to do is take a second look at the narrative that you've adopted. Take a second look, or a second read, rather, at the person that you passed up for a promotion, a job interview, a name on a resume. I'm asking you to do that one extra thing, that hard thing. But then I'm not going to ask you to do it alone. I'm going to partner with you, right? And I'm going to ask you to seek other partners within your organization so that you as an individual are not alone, that you are not, considered, the anomaly within your organization, that you have a partner that can help you in this journey, because it is a journey when we're looking at these individuals and we're asking them to take a hard look at who we are and what we've been through. We do have to place ourselves in their shoes and how they would actually make that transformation. And that's the chief, or what I've seen rather, is a chief challenge is many are just simply not interested in making that transformation, not interested in being uncomfortable, if anything, just for a moment.
Right.
I want to touch on that, Rochelle, if I could.
Absolutely.
I want to get in after Carl.
Yeah, Patrick, I'm sorry, I don't want to mispronounce your name. I enjoyed that from the point of it's needed. So to go back to Rochelle's question, I work at a prestigious law firm. I won't say their name. They know what I do. It's two of us there. Us, you already know what I'm talking about. When these situations arise with George Floyd, I became a point person at this organization to try to explain to them why I felt how I felt.
Okay.
Now,
Do you think you were used as a token?
I was that was their plan. but I didn't let it happen. At our point in time, I do think that the partnering, the going to betterness, funneling down solutions, all of that is part of it. But it's not my occupation to continue to teach you concerning me. You have to look at the people as owning their own. There has to be an accountability place in it to say, okay, I don't understand you. I'm not going to question you about how you feel, because you can't. It's no magnitude to tell you how I feel as African American being thrown against a car in a white development where I pay mortgage. And because I lost my key to get into the gate, I was accosted and asked, not did I have a problem? Not is anything wrong? Can we help you? They asked me, am I lost in the development where I pay and I pay their taxes? So when you're saying that, it's not a point of anger, because I'm very articulate enough to explain to you what I mean. But I'm not going to be the point person for you to get your education about those things that have been done to me. That has to be a self-motivation factor. And it has to be where you're going to partner with me with an understanding that these conversations are not going to be melancholy. And they're going to get to some points and places where you're going to be switching and twitching in your seat. And in that, can you embrace that with me? And then we move forward. But I'm not going to be the one that sit there and every time we have an uprising, every time an innocent Black man is killed, every time we have a march, every time we hold a sign, you're going to come to me and want an explanation. That I can stand on without the other ramifications of us moving together as a unity. But I can stand on me not being educated for you. When the opportunity arises, I do give what I have. I do share my stories, and I do educate those whom I feel that are indicative of taking what I got, moving on what I got, and being in alliance with what I have. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about that.
I know.
And I want to
go ahead.
Go ahead and add on to.
No, I want you to jump in because I was looking to see who was going to jump in.
Okay. Yeah, I want to go ahead and add on to what Brother Carl just added. Yeah, I think we're at a point now where it's not really, the onus is not on us to really do all the teaching, because that's an added baggage and weight that we have to carry on ourselves, as well as all the work that we have to do to
even get there.
Right. So yeah, for me, I got put it in a place, as he said, if a person is willing to meet me and have a conversation, and I can see that you're intentional about what you're doing, then we can have a dialogue. But I'm not going to be, and I don't think any of us should be the person where something Black happens, then we're the person that they go to, because Black people are not monolithic. We all come from different backgrounds, and that's an added stress on top of everything that we have to do, and it's traumatic. Like, you're asking me to relive my trauma every single time as a storyteller for you to feel good and not feel guilty about what has happened. And most of the people that we work with are very intelligent. They've got college degrees, they've learned a lot over life. Learning about a different culture is no different than you trying to pick up a book and learning math. True. You have to be intentional about doing it. You have to put yourself in positions where you are uncomfortable to have the dialogue. And it's not a personal attack. No one said that you did this per se, but you have to be willing to look at yourself and say, am I being complicit with this going on? Am I adding to this? How am I helping change the narrative if I feel that this is wrong? And in a sense of putting yourself in that position, how would you feel if this happened to you or your family member? More than likely, you'd be upset. And that's all people are asking for from our community, I feel like, is put yourself in our shoes for a moment. You'll see how wrong it is, because just how we saw America was so outraged by what happened to George Floyd, because you've seen it, it was put out there. You're like, oh, that's terrible. But that's something that we experience majority of our lives, of seeing this violence towards us. And a lot of the time you're able to disassociate yourself from these instances. So therefore it doesn't you don't have to deal with it. If I don't want to deal with it, like that's the thing I feel like majority of white society can sit here and say is like, if I don't want to deal with anything quote unquote black, brown, and different, I don't have to. I can silo myself in a situation where I don't have to experience it, where we do not have that luxury. I have to go in spaces where there may not be people who look like me. They don't have to go in spaces that no one looks like them. And they have to be aware of that and be willing to be intentional about what they do moving forward. But all that to say is definitely not on us to carry that weight, to be the educator, as well as it's not on us to feel like we are the representation of all black people. So that's my point.
Hey, Martin, I know you wanted to jump in, so go ahead. I'd like to say.
I think what Jamie Dimon experienced in Congress that forced Chase. Please.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
Yep. I was saying that I think what Jamie Dimon experienced, the CEO of Chase, when he was in Congress and he was being grilled by Congresswoman Katie Porter from California, and asked him how many of his tellers are on his food stamps and have to take SNAP benefits. And he wasn't able to answer that. That prompted him as a leader the next year to go to the Business Roundtable and say, we're now not putting stockholders or share value first. We're putting our employees first. And I think that's an example of leadership, but he didn't get there because he got there on his own. He got there because someone grilled him. And I think that what we don't do in our community, or haven't done, I'll say, because I want us to do. So haven't done is we look at the tools in our Black Toolbox. By the way, it's a plug for my book coming out in June. But the Black Toolbox that we carry, we have people like myself or Ashanti Martin or Elizabeth Leiba, and we can be what was just said, the voice that challenges, that makes the whiteness cringe at their pure whiteness, so that others like Jason can be a vice president in the C-suite and not have to deal with that. He can just chuckle at this post that was put up on LinkedIn that calls out the top 10 CEOs over the 2 years that made pledges over $40 billion, and only one has actually come through. So I think we have different tools in our toolbox, and I don't think, as Bush said earlier, we're not a monolithic. So there are those of us that can be the irritant, the rabble rouser. There are those of us that can show up every single day, be the good employee, be the upstanding citizen, and can contribute quietly to help the young person at the HBCU get their graduation robes, as was done yesterday. A brother made sure, I think it was North Carolina Central, the kids didn't have their robes. Some employee who probably is making $40,000 or $50,000 contributed to make sure those kids graduated with all their robes as much as he could. So there, I think all of us have our duty to do whatever, as was always already said. We have cultural intelligence. We have institutional intelligence. We know how these institutions work. We may not think we do, but we do know how these institutions work. So that means that there are some of us that are going to be museum curators that deal with the worst of the ultra rich. But that same museum curator can leave that museum and go support the small Black cafe in Bed-Stuy. So, I think that we have different duties. And there's a great book by Dr. Juwanza Kujufu that talks about this. I'm trying to remember at the top of my head. But the concept that we all have to do this or we all have to do that, I think that's wrong. But I think there are those of us can do specific tasks and duties, and those of us that can do other things and support the whole.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That makes me really think of the African proverb that we all know. It takes a village to raise a child.
Yep.
Truly takes a village. And just hearing everyone speak, these key words, emotional intelligence, vulnerability, safety, understanding, that we're not the experts and that we do need a team. This makes me think of radical collaboration, which is when a group of people all bring their human and technical strengths, experiences, and expertise to the team. And it's really when we begin getting comfortable with what is uncomfortable that is our mark of growth. And so I as all of you are saying, I say we should explore that mark of growth, that point where we feel like we're getting uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's that self-awareness piece that allows us to connect, that vulnerability piece. And last thing, I'll share just on that last question, a reflection that came to mind about, is it our duty to educate? I think about the concept or the theme of the first act of war is defense. So if we're just coming to the conversation already defending, and we're already at war, and all that, although we're trying to come with a solution or a conversation, we're coming at that with defense. And so how can we step into a place of togetherness, as we just shared that African proverb, because we must be more visible. We have to have the conversation and meet each other on the equal playing field so that we can be in it together and have it a setting of this psychological safety where folks are able to step into their vulnerability, which turns out to be the creativity, the innovation that all of our companies and organizations want to have.
Right. How would we lean in to inclusive leadership? Justin, I want to, hear your perspective. How do you think we should lean into that inclusive leadership? Where do we go from here?
I think when it comes into leaning into inclusive leadership, we need to ensure that the people who are in leadership look like us, that there's representation there. And, not just one Black person, because we're not a monolith, as was stated, that we have different voices at the table that can ensure that we're not only being inclusive, but we're being equitable, and that there is also diversity of thought. And then when we do all of that, we show that vulnerability. We are able to showcase to everyone that, even as leaders, we make mistakes. We don't know everything, and that we do work. I think it was Jason that said, even though I'm the leader, I am also a teammate. I am a team member. I'm a teammate. So we're working together. So with that inclusive leadership, ensure that everyone is represented at the table, and that everyone has a voice, and that it's still not just being funneled through the top powers that be that don't represent the masses.
Right. Any tips or gems that anybody wants to drop before the end of the Diversity Connects Us hour?
Before we end, Rochelle, I mean, I've been so amazed by the conversation. So I want to just say thanks to you guys, the perspectives that you bring. I also wanted to share, you have to be incredibly deliberate about, creating change. And quite frankly, the conversations are tough. As a Black man, it's tough for me to have. And so, I don't go into this with an expectation that it's going to be easy, bonding these relationships and creating an environment where white folks, can understand where we're coming from. It's going to be tough. But guess what? Tough luck. People have to understand that there is an expectation that everyone will have the conversations. And that was my expectation. And so, when I've got leaders on my team saying, well, I've never experienced that. Well, guess what? You're going to speak to someone that can share some experiences, and you're going to understand where people are coming from. When we look at culture, you can't lead people if you don't understand culturally how to communicate to them. And so it's so important to me, that, whether you're white, Black, whatever, you have to understand the people you're leading. And we come from various cultural backgrounds. We have different sex, we have different experiences, folks that are in the military. I mean, just an array of, of differences. And so until we can step back and understand that, it's going to be very difficult for us to communicate and really translate what it is, the message. So, with that said, tough luck. Folks need to step up and they need to speak the hard truth and listen. And that's my expectation as a leader from my leaders.
Yeah, that was a really good point, Jason. And to echo what he said earlier, just thank you, Rochelle, for bringing us all together for us to have this platform to have this conversation. And to echo what Martin had mentioned earlier in regards of we all have our own roles and jobs to do, and everyone has to look at themselves as being, in essence, a change maker, whatever way that may be. As he gave the example of someone who might have made $40,000 to $50,000 took it upon themselves to give what they have in order to make sure the people after them are able to move forward. So it was always a lifting as we climb type model that we need to have, as well as we're all here to live unselfishly. So it's the way that we continue to do and move on in life and achieve greater things is being unselfish. So we had to find out what we're doing. How can we be more intentional within our own community, whether it's, as he gave the example, the art curator going to a small Black shop and going there. And also, since we're in these different positions of power, status, whatever it may be,
Leadership.
that knowledge that we are obtaining is also up to us to filter that down to people who wouldn't have access to this. So they too can be, it's going to be the people who come after us, really. All the change that we're advocating for, it would be great if we see it in our lifetime, but it's really for those who are going to come after me, whether it's kids, grandkids, nieces, and nephews, it's for those after. But it does start with us. And as Jason said, we have to be intentional. We have to have the conversations, the uncomfortable conversations. And we need to make sure that we can create an environment where we can show up and authentically be ourselves, because that's when we're going to be able to do the best work.
And I just got to jump in there as the founder of something that I called I Love Black Women back in 2008. The way to really do what Jason was just said is to show up and make sure that we are protecting our Black women, to make sure that Black women get into the C-suite, and to make sure when they get to the C-suite, even if we have to sacrifice ourselves, our sisters have sacrificed themselves for eons for us, and it's their turn. So I was thinking when you were talking, I was like, to your point, we may not see it ourselves, but it may not even be something for us as men to see, but it is something for our sisters and our women and our queens and our grandmothers and our aunties and our nieces and our daughters to see, and to make sure that we train our sons to support them.
I'm verklempt. It's we should have a part 2. I know I'm eternally grateful again for all of you to have been here. I do not want to cut this short, but we've reached the top of the Diversity Connects Us hour, and you can definitely reach all of the guests today on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for all of the information you shared. It was such an immense pleasure to have you all on this stage all at once today. This podcast always highlights lived experiences, inspirational stories of strength and tenacity. We will share profound and courageous dialogues like we did today that influence diversity, equity, inclusion by breaking the barriers and labels of stereotypes, confronting biases, and offering best practices to achieve a more significant and cultural mindset. Stay tuned on Monday, the 24th, with 2 Black leaders in their industry, a chief molecular neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Jean-Luc, and Dr. Barthélemy. He's a neurosurgeon. Before I even introduced the 2, I hadn't known that they had studied together. So this is going to be the first time that they have seen each other since their studies. We will undoubtedly love their shared stories, and our topic is a surprise. So I'm looking forward to all of you joining in again. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this amazing talk, and stay well and be blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Rachel.
you.
Blessings to you as well.
Thank you.
Blessings to the whole panel. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Appreciate
To the
everybody.
panel.
Take
I'll
care,
send
guys.
some invites out already. Hope you'll
Yes,
respond.
let's connect all of us.
Will do.
Absolutely, Pastor. I'm in Philly, so
Oh, that's great. We right up the road.
I'm
from
in
each other.
Jersey, so I'm not that far, Pastor.
Okay, all right.
We
Elder.
have to visit each other. I'm going to have to come and congregate with you.
Easton is right up the